Welcome to Nasdaq TradeTalks, where we meet with the top thought leaders and strategists in emerging technologies, digital assets, a regulatory landscape, and capital markets. I'm your host, Jill Malandrino, and joining me on the desk at the Nasdaq market site, we have Nasser Lutfi, entrepreneur and CEO of Lutfi Investment Group, as well as Cesar Hernandez, CEO of Omni Public Consulting Group. We're here to discuss designing Civic AI architectures that embed accountability, trust, and human authority by default. It is great to have the both of you with us. Welcome to Trade Talks. Nasser, let's kick this off and get an overview of city-focused and civic AI architectures. It's a little bit more involved than enterprise because these can't be theoretical use cases. This is something that needs to have the auditability and really address operational needs. So
the capability of AI to be able to be used in city governments and facilities is enormous. It's incredible. The biggest challenge and issue with enforcing these different things is having the correct people and engineers above them to manage them. That's where the real issue lies.
What would be a use case of incorporating AI into a civic function?
Something very simple that could be used to incorporate that is something like the traffic system, to where it could be predictive in knowing how the cars will come, how they will stop, how they will go. It will already know how it will happen.
Yeah. And, you know, Cesar, it's an interesting space because AI within city and government systems, it can't be just about efficiency. The decision flow, to Nasser's point, is critical here.
Correct. I'm a big proponent of human-in-loop systems, and I am an evangelist for agentic AI and agentic systems. Similar to what Nasser was saying, is that the beauty and the value proposition of agentic AI is that it doesn't discriminate between data. An agent that is able to navigate traffic is the same agent that can navigate utilities, infrastructure, DFR programs, drone management systems. It doesn't discriminate the information, the data. The challenge is always going to be the human in the loop. Are the engineers equipped? Are the staff equipped to be able to navigate these agentic systems?
Yeah, and Nasser, I think that's really, I mean, even if we had an enterprise conversation, it would come back to the same thing, where the bridging the business objectives, the city's objectives with the technical execution, when building these models for cities and government, that's traditionally been a tension of, you know, both of those sides of the priorities when you're thinking about the business and, you know, the technical part of it.
So specifically in business, you know, AI has been a ginormous player in making things much easier, much more efficient. It's completely revolutionized business and will revolutionize government entirely. It'll make it unrecognizable, and it already has. If you look at a place like Dubai, for example, by 2027, they will have their entire legal system, civic legal system, being used on AI. It will relieve many, many things. It'll make things much easier and more fair.
Yeah, I mean, we know, and Cesar, we go back to these conversations again, using enterprise as an example, because that's what we typically cover here, but the same tension exists when you're thinking about communicating the strategy, the progress, risk to stakeholders, and trying to get that buy-in from stakeholders from, in this case, the community, all the way through city government. There's an art to that.
And I strongly feel that that tension doesn't need to exist, and here's why. The smart cities era, what it was able to do is create data sets that can have connectability. The challenge now is that smart cities had led to fragmented cities, and it causes this fragility. But the evolution of that is an agentic layer to be able to communicate across these various data sets, some older, some newer, because it can create APIs connected to an MCP, and now you have an agent and you have just updated your entire system. The cog is the education. Are the city managers, mayors, policymakers aware of how this is not a market opportunity, this is an inevitability as to where things are headed, and it's the future. So the cog is education. Are they equipped? Do they understand how agentic systems work? Because enterprise are creating these solutions, but a lot of the times, the challenge is that they are templates. They're selling AI agentic templates that aren't customizable and fit for government.
Yeah, and Nasser, you know, even if we think about from the community perspective as well, you have to get their buy-in too, right? And be able to address those concerns. What's the longer impact to the community? What's the accountability that the government holds? Where are these resources coming from? How are they being paid? You know, citizens should be caring about stuff like that. So again, I think bridging that gap is critical.
I think the first thing that citizens need to understand is that AI is here to help. And the most important component in understanding that is making sure that we do have the right people in place to facilitate that, specifically the right engineers, like we mentioned before, the right people that know how this works, that have been doing this, that are well equipped with being able to handle things like this, specifically in AI and these different systems.
Yeah, I mean, the technical expertise is one thing, but security, ethics, responsible governance. There's a reason why frameworks and guardrails are in place to, I wouldn't look at it as stifling innovation, but more as a pro-responsible innovation mindset. This is only going to be as successful as the, you know, as the citizens trust it.
That's very, very true.
Yeah.
It's very true.
I mean, so Cesar, how would you address that? I mean, you're you know, in one point you're talking about human in the loop and auditability. And that requires security, ethics, again, responsible governance at the outset, at the model, right? But then you're also talking about agentic AI. So where's the marriage here? How do you find that balance?
So 3 ways. Number 1, operationally, agentic systems are a bit more secure because it's not a one big data lake, right? They're siloed within data sets that are connected. So within that, is harder to penetrate, right? Whenever you're trying to attack an agentic system, you're gonna have to attack it throughout multiple silos. And so it makes it a little bit more difficult. The second thing is public-private partnerships, right? I think that the future of this is P3s. So not allowing government to try to create something that it's outside of their wheelhouse, but going to experts that understand how to build out these agentic systems specifically for government that's going to impact the citizenry. And then the third thing, and I think that is the most important part of agentic systems, is you cannot have one single point of failure when it comes to AI. So I am of the cadre of individuals within the space that promotes human in loop systems, not AGI. I strongly feel that you have to have individuals where authority relies and is incumbent on a person, and that there isn't just one faith, but a cascade of trigger mechanisms. So if something does go wrong, you're able to identify it and triage it in real time. And then the component for the citizens is to have audit logs that shows the decision-making process of the algorithm as to how it's interfacing and the decisions that it's making, anywhere from like traffic management to infrastructure to utilities.
Yeah, and this is why it's critical that governance and cybersecurity risk mitigation is embedded into the systems themselves and the models, because you'd rather plan for that cost in the beginning versus trying to figure things out, to your point, either later through a failure or as policy gets updated, you know.
Yeah, you do not want like a BP oil spill where there's one fail-safe and you're trying to reduce costs. When you're building out an agentic layer, you want to build the most secure layer and the most transparent layer, because it can optimize a city. It can take crisis response times from like 12 minutes to 4 minutes. It can take HR or any kind of documentation process from things that would take 6 months down to a couple of days.
Yeah.
Some of the things that I've seen that has been most compelling, that may not seem the most attractive, is transportation feasibility studies, right? Whenever a city wants to create a new feasibility study or transportation study, they have to study studies. You have hundreds of millions of dollars of studies that then you have to study. An agent can do that in a couple of days, and you'll be saving millions of dollars for the taxpayers, and we'll have a system that will be able to audit it immediately and say, this is how we can update our current systems.
Yeah, and Nasser, I'd like to get your perspective as well when you're building governance first through trust, resilience, cybersecurity mitigation, and so forth. Not only is it more sustainable in terms of long-termism, but it should also allow the city scale system to adapt as these technologies emerge as well, as they evolve as well.
100%. It is still a new field for us as humans, and it's still fresh to us. You know, the more time that goes by, the more we advance with it, the more we understand it better, the more we understand how it works better, the more we can do more with it, you know. So it's a great tool. It has unlimited capability. I think the sky's the limit with AI.
Yeah. How long would you say that governments or city scale civic projects have been in the works? Are they open to adopting it as broadly as enterprises, as an example? Or what are some of the roadblocks, basically?
I think cities are open to it. I think it's still fresh. I think that with time, it will become inevitable. I think as other cities start to adopt it and use it more, other cities will look at that and say, you know, they're doing a great job. Why not make our cities like theirs, you know? There's only continued added benefit. There's some negatives, but the benefit is a lot more than the negatives.
Yeah, I mean, you know, again, we talk about this from an enterprise perspective and the demand that it has on our infrastructure as an example. I would say having AI civic systems is just as important as considering, you know, national security purposes as well.
I'm glad that you brought that up, and it is because the way that AI, the way that it's being built or the architecture around it, AI doesn't have a soul, right? The soul behind it is humans, humanity. The greatest question is, how will AI live in harmony with humanity? Now, will the West lead in democratic AI and how artificial intelligence is embedded within our civic infrastructure? Because I can tell you this, the reality is there are regimes who are building these AI infrastructures for surveillance, right? They're building it for control. So it's time, and there's an opportunity for the US to kind of lead. I don't know what that looks like. I strongly feel that the front lines of that is cities, because cities are gonna impact people directly. And the most attractive things aren't drone management systems, they're plumbing, they're HR, permitting, traffic, right? How day-to-day operations function within a citizenry. That's the most attractive promise.
And it's interesting that you bring up permitting, because in order to execute on these aggressive data center plans requires a lot of permitting, and we don't have 8 to 10 years for new data centers to, you know, to come on board, when certainly making that process more efficient is an example there as well. But you know, I like the way you framed it, where it doesn't have a soul, right? Mm-hmm. And I think from an ethics perspective, there is subjectivity as it relates to the models.
Correct.
Right. So
Correct.
I think you know, when we talk about data in, data out, garbage in, garbage out, that's where I think the argument's going to get interesting, because it can be subjective, and of course, you know, you mentioned off the top being aware of these biases and so forth when planning for these types of projects. And I think we're at very early innings with that.
And it's the reason why I'm an evangelist for agentic AI, right? Because government specifically can control the data and the information that's being given to the agent, whereas if you let an AGI loose, you don't really know what it's doing, right? It can tell you what it's doing, but it's continuously reiterating on itself. Whereas an agentic layer, it's only as good as the data that it's being fed and the parameters from which it's making the decisions and the triggers that you're giving the agent. It's a bit more control rather than seeing what happens.
Yeah.
For instance, like just base model how an agent is built, it's gonna have a core memory, it's gonna have an LLM, that's its brain, and it's gonna have what's the most important, RAG modeling. It's just reiteration. It reduces the ability to hallucinate. Some people like hallucinations because of creativity. You don't want creativity in government, right? You want functionality and efficiency. And that's the beauty of an AI agent. So I strongly implore, if you're a government looking for this, you need the most secure system, and you need individuals that are actually building customizable agents for cities.
Yeah, and Nasser, that kind of goes back to the point before, where there's always going to be a human in the loop, because AI, as it stands right now, doesn't have the ability to be dynamic in situations that are evolving in real time.
100%. You know, these people are the most important piece when it comes to these AI systems. If you do not have these people that are educated and that know how to run these systems, there's a lot of issues that will come into play. And these are the most important parts of this, the people that will run these systems.
Yeah. All right. Appreciate both of your insights. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks. And thanks for joining me from MarketSite, and Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.